Hi everybody, my name is Nohman Awan and I work for Balfour Beatty as a digital construction lead for North and Midlands region. In my presentation, I will take you through a journey talking about the smart cities principles and if they can be used for smart rural as well. Before we dive into the smart cities principles, I would like to show you guys some of the design principles which are considered when designing the living spaces, cities, history, and the new trends. Then we will look into smart cities principles and the architecture. I would also talk about the industrial revolutions because they are also impacting our living spaces. Then we will talk about the circular economy, and then I will end with how can we really add value. To begin with, let's look at the brief history of the term smart growth and smart development. In 2010, European Union adopted the notion smart in their growth strategy, which was in response to the worldwide crisis. The objective of the strategy was that Europe should become a smart, sustainable and inclusive economy. Now let's look at some of the key principles which are used when designing the living spaces. The core of design principles is human life, in which human activity or movement is essential. We have different types of activities, as an example, productive activities, recreational activities, which all form together as human life. There are 5 key principles: productivity, sustainability, livability, leadership, and design excellence. Together, they create productive, sustainable, and livable places for people. I would also add productive activities also require spaces which allow collaboration, which is an important factor for better performance. Without going into too much historical facts, I would like to just highlight some trends. In Britain, cities expanded rapidly in 18th century due to the industrialization, and people migrated into cities for work. This is the time when we started to have infrastructure of canals, railway, and growth of UK ports. By the end of 20th century, there was a beginning of digital technologies, which gave the businesses a new infrastructure of e-commerce. This graph is for illustration purpose only. It certainly vary from cities to cities. According to Birmingham city history, the industrialization began around 1750, when the population jumped from 24,000 to 73,000. So this is where we had the first industrial revolution around this time and the third industrial revolution here. Now, if we look at the recent trends, the data is the key, and we have evolving digital economy. As you can see, by the end of 20th century, we had about 100 gigabytes of data per day. Now, at the beginning of 21st century, the same amount of data has changed from per day to per second, and this per second data consumption is continuously increasing. Regarding smart cities principles, there are certainly different schools of thoughts and frameworks available. I have chosen one school of thought for this presentation. So in this chosen school of thought, there are 23 principles, and I have just chosen some of them just to highlight some important points. Number one, it should not be technology-led approach. And it should demonstrate the sustainability. Consider the future technological infrastructure needs. The facilities should be flexible as possible, and it should it should include the wired or wireless connectivity, and information should be openly available. And it should reduce the energy consumption, sustainable infrastructure, fully utilize the capabilities and resources, more presence in the social media, and increase connectivity. Now, these smart cities principles have been summarized very well by World Economic Forum in this figure, focusing on the intelligent assets in a smart city. First of all, we have to have customer engagement points, and those customer engagement points should be supported with the connected applications and the systems, and these applications and systems should be supported with the infrastructure. Once we have all of this in place, then we can effectively use the resources. Now let's look at the smart city architecture. Again, there are different schools of thoughts and different architectures available for smart cities. I have just chosen one which has been tried and tested. This smart city architecture has been applied in Amsterdam, Barcelona, Helsinki, and Vienna cities. For smart city, we have to consider all these layers where we start by setting our goals. First consider people, first consider the goals and then the people within the city. Then you have ecosystems within a fully functional city. Then you have soft infrastructure like governance, standards, and then you have fully functional city systems, multiple systems within a fully functional city. Then you have hard infrastructure. This is a layer where the technology plays a significant role. The technology like the multiple sensors, Internet of Things, they all fall in this layer. So cities have several functional elements which we need to consider when creating an architecture, because all those functional elements, they require collaboration and communication between themselves. Now, just as an example, if we try to apply smart city architecture for smart rural, it will look very similar. At the layer 1, the goals will be very similar. The people, they are very similar. Ecosystem, the only difference you might see is around agricultural ecosystem, but everything else is very similar. Soft infrastructure related to agriculture might be slightly different to smart cities, but city systems are the rural systems, they will be very similar. Hard infrastructure, this is a layer which is in principle is similar. However, the difference out in the real world might be a bit different. In cities, hard infrastructure, there will be a bit better comparatively better hard infrastructure in cities rather than in rural. So this is the only layer where you will see some difference. Now, once this architecture was applied in Amsterdam, Barcelona, Helsinki, and Vienna, so they have made some recommendations after this study. and all those recommendations are related to some key questions. So the question number 1 is, should the objectives be based on the technology, or should it be a holistic strategy? So the recommendation is develop smart city strategy based on holistic vision, objectives, rather than on the technology. So this particular question is related to architectural layer 1 and 2. That's where you define your purpose, objectives, and define your stakeholders. Question number 2 is about collaboration. So recommendation is we should exploit triple helix collaboration model and also explore quadruple helix model. This is really important for the ecosystems, and this question is related to layer 3 of the smart city architecture. In this layer, so quadruple helix model allows the end users to collaborate. Question 3, should we follow bottom-up approach or top-down approach? The answer to this, the recommended answer for this question was it should be a combined approach. And this particular question is related to layer 4 of the architecture. That's where government is playing its role. So there are some legislation, there are rules, policies, standards, which helps the ecosystems to excel, and it also allows the end users to collaborate better. So question 4 is about interventions. Should it be monodimensional or integrated? So the recommended answer was we should have an integrated approach, and this particular question is related to layer 5 and 6 of the architecture. Remember, this is a level where you have multiple functional city systems, and the hard infrastructure is at this level, so we should have better approach. So now let's talk about the industrial revolution. So they have been impacting our living spaces since more than these industrial revolutions have been affecting us since 18th century. So the industrial revolution, which we all understand better today, it's the fourth revolution. So this is a revolution. This revolution is about the technology, and which has been significantly impacting on not just the businesses, but it's impacting on our lives too. The technology have several associated dimensions. Some of them are enhancing human life, and some of them are causing disruptions. It has been proven that if the organizations use the technology effectively, they will see higher revenue growth. However, we need to understand some technologies have transformational impact and some of them have moderate to high impact. So we need to consider the wider spectrum for the technology. If you guys remember at the start of my presentation, I was talking about the first industrial revolution in 18th century. Now in 21st century, we have the fifth industrial revolution, which is unlike other revolutions. It's about the purpose and the inclusivity. And this is an important part. This is an important element for smart cities and smart rural objectives. The fifth industrial revolution is very much linked with the circular economy, because it's about knowing the available resources and the efficient use of these resources. Circular economy is a fundamental part of the smart cities or smart rurals. We already have so much data available about our resources through multiple different data sources. As an example, through GIS, we have multiple different data sources, different data layers of data available, which we can connect with, which we can connect and benefit from these different data sources. Their example of data sources, data source about the green belt. So I am going to conclude my presentation with this section. At the start, I said the data is the key for our digital economy, and the majority of us understand how companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Airbnb are monetizing this data. They are capturing this data, they are monetizing this data. But the question is, how do we add value? So we need to look beyond just the data itself. We need to look at the how do we create the value. So how do we, what value are we trying to create, and then where we storing this data, how we are collecting this data, and how we are adding intelligence to this data. As I understand, we can only create value by focusing on the sustainability. We have to use the natural resources in such a way so we meet our needs for today and tomorrow. So the tool which we have, the new economic system, is a circular economy. Using circular economy, we are we're dealing with human needs and within the planetary means. So these two things combined, so the focus is to maximize human well-being within planetary means. So this is where circular economy is going to help us to satisfy these needs, and this is where we are adding value. This is a value shift. So all of this combined is going to, it is setting the smart city and the smart rural objectives. I would conclude with these points. Smart city principles and architecture can be directly applied to smart rural. In fact, it's equally important to apply smart rural principles in our rural areas. In my opinion, it's really important to have the right balance between smart cities and smart rural, because we can't achieve the true sustainability just from cities. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to share your comments or questions. Thank you.